Yo, it is Low. Welcome back to an episode of Being the Backlog. You know what it is. It's the series where I review random games from my random backlog. And today we're looking at Black, which is a game that I played on Xbox One through backwards compatibility. So Black was released in 2006 for the PS2 and the Xbox, the original Xbox. And it's a first-person shooter developed by Criterion Games. Yeah, the same people that had up to that point only done vehicular kind of games, including the fantastic Burnout series. For whatever reason, here they decided to take on an FPS game, which is a very interesting choice for the company. In the game, you actually play as Sergeant First Class Jack Keller. So the game frames its story around an interrogation scene, kinda, where your character Keller explains his pursuits of a smuggling and terrorist operation called Seventh Wave in Russia, and it's very reminiscent of Call of Duty Black Ops, a game like that, which had a similar kind of premise. And as far as the story goes for this game, I usually don't say a lot about the stories because if you want to play the game yourself, I don't spoil it. But honestly, there's really not much else to say besides that. It doesn't take that many twists and turns like maybe Black Ops would. It's fairly standard. It's really just there, to give you a groundwork for why you're shooting people. It's whatever. It's not anything too exciting for me, especially compared to some other kind of war shooters that I've played. It's just standard. But, it's not like I really came to this game for the story. Obviously, it's an FPS game. I came here to shoot people. It's all about the gameplay, bro. The gameplay. And I'm gonna be honest, the gameplay is not too bad. It's a standard first-person shooter fare where you get dropped into level. You gotta walk through the level. In this game, you literally do walk through the level. There's no sprinting or running or anything. Not even any jumping, which is kind of odd. So you walk through the level, you shoot the bad guys as they appear. That's almost entirely it. There aren't really any super innovative or new mechanics here, but it doesn't really need them. To me, it still manages to be fun with what it has, even though it is just shooting people. So the gunplay has to be on point, and I will be honest, it is definitely on point here. It is one of my favorite parts of the game. You have guns that are split into classes. You have shotguns, you have submachine guns, you have even snipers. And a large part of the decision making here does boil down to what weapons do I need for this level or this part of the level. It's fairly flexible because almost every gun in the game is good enough to do what you need to do, which is kill people. There's still an element there that you have to consider. Some levels you're not going to benefit a lot from the shotgun. You can try sniping with the shotgun, it might work actually because the shotgun's kind of overpowered. But I kind of doubt you're going to get a lot of mileage compared to using an assault rifle, even a pistol, or obviously a sniper rifle. So yeah, the guns were probably my favorite part of the whole game in terms of gameplay mechanics, because it was definitely the most fleshed out and solid part of the game. The destructible environments are a thing too here. Things will blow up a lot of the time, and I thought it was pretty cool, but nothing compared to the satisfaction that the gunplay brought me. That's really what kept me coming back to the game to actually finish it, was just how satisfying it was to shoot weapons. And the game does something kind of interesting with objectives. Each level has obviously primary objectives, get to this place, destroy this thing, destroy these things, all that kind of stuff. But depending on the difficulty you select, you also may need to complete an amount of secondary objectives. It's kind of reminiscent of something like the old school rare shooters, like Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, where you can kind of fail a mission if you don't know exactly what to do. That's kind of what these secondary objectives are. They're things you kind of have to go out of your way to make sure you do before the mission's over, or else you fail. And as difficulties increase, you have to do more of them. But in this game, it's a little bit easier, because these are more like collectibles than anything else. You go into this side room and get these intel documents, or destroy these blackmail containers. You can maybe write this off as, oh, they're just trying to pad out the missions and stuff like that. But for normal mode, which is, difficulty I would expect someone to play on their first time, it's fairly negligible because the requirement for the amount of like secondary things you need to get is like really small. So as long as you go off the beaten path every now and then, you'll be good. And from another perspective, these kind of give you an opportunity to search the levels and find other kinds of goodies. You know, you can find more health packs, more grenades, even some of the like rarer and more fun weapons to use, like the Magnum or the RPG. And for the, you know, it's something that I wish shooters and games in general, honestly, would incentivize more, because part of the fun is like finding something that's kind of hidden. You know, like in Doom, when you find it, like an old school Doom game, maybe even the new ones, I'm not sure. When you find like the secrets and it's like, oh shit, this is cool, you get like a BFG. You know, stuff like that's just really satisfying to me as a player. And I really appreciate that this game kind of, and with the secondary objectives, it almost kind of incentivized that, so it really wasn't as much of a nuisance as I thought it was going to be originally. The level design for this game, I will have to say, it's very, very average. It's not like the worst I've ever seen. It didn't really like do a lot for me either. It's a war shooter, so it's going to be cover based, and you know, I don't have that much of a problem with that, because I mean, how else is a war shooter really going to play out? And a lot of these areas have fairly long range firefights, so a lot of the combat just boils down to peek. You just peek out and you peek out and you shoot, and that's like how it goes. I'm assuming on higher difficulties it's even worse with that. Now, certain weapons do give you a bit more breathing room to go in. Like when you have a shotgun, you can almost one-tap anything, and if you know exactly where enemies are or going to come from, you can probably clear them out really fast with grenades and stuff. I mean, that's how a lot of shooters are. As long as if you know where things are coming from, it's going to be a lot easier. The indoor levels are the only ones where that's really viable, I'd say, because when the long range levels come in, you know, they're just too far away to really do anything about, so you kind of have to dive into cover, pop out, get the kill, go back, get the next one, blah blah blah. So, I mean, it works for this game, I suppose. Now, like I said, I don't have too much of a problem with it, but I do kind of wish it was more like along the lines of my favorite shooters, at least, are like Doom and Halo, where they have multiple avenues, multiple strategies to fight in the various firefights you find yourself in. But that's just a little nitpick I had. And I was going to talk a little bit about the enemies in this game, but there's really not much to say. There aren't really bosses like some shooters may have. There are some enemies, though, that can be considered a bit trickier. Like there's these guys with shields that have magnums, or SMGs sometimes, and they can be a little bit tricky if you don't have grenades. Honestly, other than that, all the enemies in this game are just there to die almost instantly. If you hit headshots, you're not going to have very much of a problem with anything in this game. And I mean, I don't have too much of a problem with that because it's a war shooter. I'm not really expecting like fucking what's the thing from Doom that has like the spider. But it's just something I felt like talking about because I'm stupid. I will say though, the RPG guys, they're the real final boss. Alright, so graphics. I'm not gonna have a lot to say about graphics. It's a 2006 game, and for what it's worth, it doesn't look all that bad to me. Now, of course, it does boil down to that thing that war shooters like to do, where the whole color palette is just brown, gray, and all that's in between. But honestly, the game does not have any issues. It's not like I can't tell where someone is or something is. As brown and gray as things get, enemies do stand out. I can tell what I'm shooting at, and that's really all I want out of graphics in a game. I don't care if you need like RTX 257 watts. The second level does deserve a small accolade from me though, because it does have a little bit more color than anything else in the game. Because it's set in a forest, so there's some green in there, you know, it's one of the cooler levels to look at for me. One small graphical thing I will point out is this little flash of light that happens, usually when you shoot a gun. I'm assuming it has to do with like the muzzle flash like coming back to you. And I don't know why, like, I picked out this thing of all things, but this was like one of the most satisfying things in the entire game for me. Because like, when you know you hit a headshot, there's like a sense of reaffirmation as the white flash comes in. It's like, oh, the impact. And that's really one thing I want to talk about. Like, the impact with this game and shooting guns is just massive, and a lot of that is owed to the sound design. So I will say the guns are sounding super nice and punchy here. The oral aspect of shooting is almost more impactful to me than the visual thing that I just mentioned, or at least it helps the visual thing as well. When you hear this loud, like the shotgun just blasting and then the flash of light, or the magnum, it's just really satisfying to me, and it's one of the highlights of the game personally. There's no sounds really missing. Every sound you would expect to hear is here and then some. And one of the things about this game is they put a lot of work into making sure the sound design was on point. And for what it's worth, everything is very polished, distinguished. It never really sounds just like a pool of noise like a lot of war games tend to be. Thing like you can hear this enemy, and that's an enemy. You can hear a different enemy, that's a different enemy. Like it doesn't sound like two of the same people, and it's just really cool to me. It's just like when I'm used to like these just cacophonies of noise in a shooter, this game really went the extra mile to give everything more of an impact, and the quality of the sound too is just tremendous. As for music, not a lot to say. There's a score composed largely by a Chris Tilton, who I've never heard of prior to this, and it's fine. Yeah, it really hammers home the cinematic influence that seems to be running throughout the entire game. And I guess I haven't really mentioned it yet, but literally everything in this game just is like a movie. You have this epic orchestral score, the flashy action and sound effects, and even the live action cutscenes that are playing in between levels. It's just dripping with like blockbuster action war movie influence to me. And even if it's a bit too much at times, it is kind of cool. It kind of gives the game a little bit of its own character. And that is all I have to say about Black. It's a very solid game. My biggest complaints really are just with the slightly dissatisfying level design, the lack of multiplayer, and the short length. And I didn't talk about those last two things yet, and I kind of feel like a dumbass for not writing it in the script. But yeah, the game has literally no multiplayer at all, which is really weird because with the way the gunplay is, it could have worked really well as like a Halo style multiplayer. And the campaign is only about 6 or 7 hours long, which is fine, but it could have been more, it could have been more. And I mean, I guess the addition of higher difficulties and second playthrough rewards can help a little bit with the replay value, but it's not something that interests me in particular. Aside from all that, though, what you have here is a fairly competent and solid console FPS game. If you're looking for a few hours of fun, it can definitely give you it. I'm going to give Black a strong 6 to a light 7. It is a fun game, absolutely, but it doesn't really do anything that, say, Halo or even Call of Duty hasn't done any better, so yeah. That's going to be all for this episode of Beating the Backlog. Have you played Black? Did you like it? Did you like it or did you not like it? Let me know your opinions on the game in the comments, or any feedback you have on the video itself is always appreciated. If there's a certain game you want to see me review for this series, I'll do it. If you leave a comment, I'd be more than happy to check it out if I can. And I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you next time on Beating the Backlog, and peace.